morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. Today we are going to define and historicize global diaspora. So, the world has witnessed a significant surge in international migration since the Second World War, and this is a trend of unprecedented scale. In 1990, the International Organization for Migration estimated that over 80 million migrants had moved out of their country of origin. 30 million were irregular migrants, and another 15 million were refugees or asylum seekers. So, this surge has significantly influenced the evolution of diaspora studies. The United Nations Population Division in July 2002 estimated that 185 million people lived outside their country of birth at that given point in time. The field of diaspora studies has undergone a fascinating, complex evolution in the last 2 decades, especially, and it has received considerable attention from academicians, administrators, policymakers, social workers, as well as media. And there has been a significant shift in the analysis of immigrants' experiences. So, as a term which has well structured theoretical dimensions, diaspora began its journey into scholarship. So, we see this interface between diaspora as a phenomenon and scholarly intervention, or diaspora's kind of interface with academia in the 1980s. This began with Gabriel Schaeffer's book Modern Diasporas in International Politics, which came out in 1986. In a later book titled Diaspora Politics at Home Abroad, which came out in 2003 at the turn of the century, Schaeffer observes that his earlier book was the first theoretical, analytical, and empirical attempt towards creating a new field of study in diaspora. So, historically, the term diaspora primarily refers to the dispersion of people from their original homeland. It originates from the Greek word diasporian, which is very close to the English word dispersion or scattering of seeds. Until the later part of the 20th century, scholars predominantly described the Jews exiled from the Holy Land of Jerusalem, along with a handful of other scattered groups as diaspora. So, till the later part of the 20th century, or effectively till we see in the earlier part or till the mid of the 20th century, the predominant notion that actually overlapped with that corresponded with the concept of diaspora was that of the Jewish exile alongside the exile of certain other scattered groups. So, it was commonly associated with classical and traditional diasporas such as the Armenian diaspora and the Greek diaspora. However, to use Khachig Tololian's often cited introduction to his first volume of the journal Diaspora, I would quote Tololian here: "The term that once described Jewish, Greek, and Armenian dispersion now shares meanings with a larger semantic domain that includes words like immigrant, expatriate, refugee, guest worker, exile community, overseas community, ethnic community, and so forth." Unquote. So, previously it had a very reduced meaning, and now diaspora has expanded to incorporate all these categories. This expansion of the definition of diaspora caused much confusion as writers began to use the term indiscriminately and applied the term diaspora to all kinds of groups and individuals, turning it almost into an all-purpose word. To comprehend diaspora theory and its definition, it is very important to understand the term route, right? So, route or route. This term has gained prominence in the contemporary discourses of migration studies. So, it has gained its currency vis-a-vis the contemporary discourses of migration studies, representing one of the chief features of modern life. So, route is characterized by frequent movements both within and outside nation states, and its relevance to diaspora theory lies in its depiction of the paths and journeys that are taken by dispersed communities. The term route is also popularized by critic James Clifford, and it suggests a way of life which is sharply in contrast to the one that is conveyed by the term route, ROOT, route. So we have the route or the ROUTE route and the ROOT route, which the latter, denoting preference for accustomed earth and relatively stable cultures that develop there. So, when we talk of our roots, our origins, we are talking about a familiar and stable culture. Whereas route, route or route is about traveling, about navigation in terms of culture, experimentation in terms of identity. So, the very essence of ROUTE, route or route, is embedded in the term diaspora. Steeped in the spirit of history, politics, and religion, diaspora was coined long ago during the classical period. This is when the whole idea of diaspora is conceived for the first time. It has now been revived as a theoretical tool, as a way of denoting specific kinds of dislocations which are taking place all over the world. There was very little evidence of the presence of diaspora criticism or diaspora theory in the decades prior to the 1980s. Regarding the absence of using this term diaspora, scholar William Safran, in his article titled Diasporas in Modern Societies, Myths of Homeland and Return, which came out in 1991, refers to the omission of the phenomenon called diaspora in hitherto, scholarly discussions. Till that point in time, till a certain point, we see like the first half of 20th century, especially diaspora as a phenomenon has remained under discussed in scholarship in academic fields. So, Safran observes that the omission of the word diaspora in discourses is not very surprising. Rather, it had a specific meaning. So, in the case of the exile of the Jews from their historical homeland and their dispersion throughout many lands, diaspora would signify oppression and moral degradation by that dispersion. So, diaspora would be connected with a very negative outcome or consequences. In search of a definition of diaspora, some of the most famous characteristics of diaspora have been laid out by critics including William Safran, Khachik Tololian, and Vijay Mishra, and we are going to take them up when we try to find a definition for diaspora. So, William Safran, in his famous article titled Diasporas in Modern Societies, which came out in 1991, discusses the concept of the formation of diaspora and the application of this term to situations or to groups other than the Jewish communities. Most notably, he is trying to understand the term diaspora vis-a-vis expatriates, expellees, political refugees, alien residents, immigrants, and ethnic minorities. And has particularly pointed out, we see Safran points out 9 key points or common features of the diasporic phenomenon. So, first point in this context is dispersal from an original homeland. So, diaspora is necessarily a population, or a diasporic subject is someone who is dispersed from the original homeland, often traumatically, and the person has been relocated to 2 or more foreign regions. Alternatively, diaspora could also refer to the expansion or journey from a homeland in search of work, in pursuit of trade, or in order to take forward colonial ambitions. So, expansion that has happened not out of trauma or out of force, but that is undertaken by a social group with certain agenda, certain ambitions in their mind. And then diaspora also refers to a collective memory and myth about the homeland, including its location, history, and achievements. So, further, diaspora refers to an idealization of a supposed ancestral home and a collective commitment towards maintaining, restoring, and dedicating, investing towards saving this home and further towards this home's prosperity and creation. So, the development of a return movement which gains collective approval. Next, diaspora is understood in terms of a strong ethnic group consciousness that is sustained over a long time and is based on a sense of distinctiveness, a common history, and the belief in a common fate. Further, diaspora could also refer to a troubled relationship with the host societies, which suggests a lack of acceptance at the least, or the possibility, one could also say, apprehension that another calamity might befall the group. So, once a group has entered a host society, especially as a political refugee, there is this possibility, or at least there is this apprehension, that they might face another calamity or some negative experience in the host society. Then there is this sense of empathy and solidarity with co ethnic members in other countries of settlement. This is another very, prominent characteristic, a salient feature of the diaspora. Next, we have the possibility of a distinctive yet creative and enriching life in host countries for the diaspora, should such a host society be tolerant towards pluralism. So, instances where the host societies show their affinity for pluralist values, they have tolerance for pluralism, there could also be a very creative and enriching life envisioned in the diaspora, or envisioned or experienced by the diaspora in the new land. William Safran's definitions of diaspora came out in 1991, and then 5 years later, Khachik Tolonian in Rethinking Diasporas, a work that came out in 1996, suggests a tighter definition of this concept, and Tolonian puts forth the following criteria. First one, by Tolonian, the diaspora has its origin in the fact that a large number of individuals were forced to leave their country by severe political, economic, or rather other constraints. So it's forceful. Second is, before leaving their country, these people already shared a well defined identity. Third, diasporic communities actively maintain or construct a collective memory which forms a fundamental element of their identity. Fourth, these communities keep more or less tight control over their ethnic boundaries, whether voluntarily or under constraints from the host society. Fifth, communities, the diasporic communities are mindful of maintaining relations among themselves. And finally, they also wish to maintain contact with their country of origin, their motherland, provided it is still existent. So, according to Tololian's definitions or conditions that define the concept of diaspora, diasporas are different from other migrant communities. People are driven by their desire to remain in good relations with their own location or their ancestral land through the practice of, through cultivating of a collective memory. Therefore, a key point to consider in a diasporic community is a group consciousness or retention of, cultivation of, fostering of collective memory. In the words of the French social scientist Michel Bruno, the diaspora definition by Tolonian and Safran may be summed up as, to quote Bruno, a conscious and factual claim to an ethnic or national identity, unquote. Now, diasporas have largely been identified and defined in terms of the social or economic power that they yield. In other words, the development of a triadic political or economic relationship. In this regard, Vijay Mishra's definition of diaspora is noteworthy. So, Vijay Mishra, in the Diaspora double issue of SPAN, whose full form, the Journal of the South Pacific Association for Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies, in this journal, Mishra presents a three-tier definition of diaspora. This definition, which is a significant departure from the original 1989 edition related to the dispersion of the Jews, is a thought provoking contribution to our understanding of the term diaspora. So, Mishra offers a fresh perspective on relatively homogeneous displaced communities that brought the following conditions to bear. The first is serving the empire. It could be as a slave, under contract, or under conditions of indenture, as well as coexisting with the indigenous and other races with markedly ambivalent and contradictory relationship with one's motherland. So, here we are talking about the Indian diasporas of South Africa, the Indian diasporas in Fiji, Mauritius, Guyana, Trinidad, Suriname, Malaysia, as well as the Chinese diaspora of Malaysia and Indonesia that can be linked to high capitalism. Next, we think of the condition of emergence of new diasporas based on free migration and linked to late capitalism. Here we have examples such as post-war South Asian, Chinese, Arab and Korean communities that migrate to Britain, Europe, America, Canada and Australia. The third condition he talks about could include any group of migrants that see itself on the periphery of power or excluded from sharing power. According to scholar Makarand Paranjape, being a diasporan based on free migration and its linkages to late capitalism could be perceived as a privileging situation in terms of economy, in economic terms, because such a condition does not entail or does not involve an anguished state of displacement because of further possibilities of bicultural experiences and opportunities that bicultural experiences pose or posit. So, according to critics Martinez Bennett and Jana Harry-Tetos, biculturalism is based on the formation of identity which involves two independent psychological constructs, cultural conflict as well as cultural distance, each representing unique and separate aspects of the dynamic intersection between mainstream culture and ethnic culture. So, basically, the upshot, the different consequences of two cultures coming face to face or crossing roads. So, with reference to biculturalism, diaspora can be minimally defined in John Docker's terms, I quote, as a sense of belonging to more than one history, to more than one time and place, more than one past and future, unquote. Docker further states, to quote him at length, diaspora suggests belonging to both here and there, now and then. Diaspora suggests the omnipresent weight of pain of displacement from a land or society, of being an outsider in a new one. Diaspora suggests lack and excess of loss and separation, yet also the possibility of new adventures of identity and the continued imagining of unconquerable countries of the mind, unquote. So, there are complexities in defining a diaspora and venturing into newer possibilities of one's identity. So, therefore, there is a problem in fixing the definition of diaspora related to a particular geographical location, and therefore, it is very difficult to arrive at or offer and reach a fixed definition of diaspora that is related to a particular geographical location. According to Kim D. Butler, I quote Butler, shifting the defining element of diaspora studies from the group itself to a methodological and theoretical approach which might be one possibility to the study of the phenomenon of diaspora in human history. So, Butler suggests shifting the defining element of diaspora studies from the group itself to a methodological and theoretical approach. This could be one of the possible ways to study the phenomenon of diaspora in human history. So, in this context, Butler, in her article Defining Diaspora, Refining a Discourse, which came out in 2001, has provided the following 5 dimensions which are unique to comprehend diasporas and which can facilitate research and studies on diaspora. One is to understand the reasons for and the conditions of the dispersal. Second is relationship that the diaspora has or maintains with one's homeland. Third is relationship with the host land. Fourth is interrelationships within communities of the diaspora. And fifth, comparative studies of different diasporas. These 5 ways of approaching diaspora studies can enable us to kind of formulate or rather encompass the conditions that shape the concept of diaspora itself. To sum up, partly the historical reference to the diaspora can be seen as what Louis Jacques Durais in his work Defining the Overseas Vietnamese says. So, according to Durais, diaspora is a way of replacing or supplementing the majority or minority binary discourse. According to Durais, diaspora is a way of replacing or supplementing the majority minority binary discourse. So, the historicity of the term diaspora corresponds to a botanical process of dislocation or dispersion. It was originally used in the Septuagint or Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Holy Torah, the Holy Book of Torah of the Jews, and it was applied to the Jewish experience of exile and interpreted in ancient studies as the paradigm for both exile and diaspora. So, this Septuagint became the paradigm for explaining exile and diaspora. In its earliest usage, diaspora carried the complex connotations of dispersal and decomposition. According to the scholar critic Himadri Lahiri, the Alexandrian Jewish Greek translators of the Hebrew scriptures adopted precisely the disastrous connotations of current philosophical discourse. So, diaspora was almost synonymous with a curse word which refers to banishment by God. Diaspora would signify banishment by God. As Sudesh Mishra in his work Diaspora Criticism points out, so I quote Mishra at length. In the context of its appearance in Deuteronomy, this diasporic removal is associated with curse, with a perpetual otherness amid others, with blindness, madness, and defeat, with a spreading that weakens. In fact, the Hebrew word zava, rendered diaspora in Greek, denotes not so much removal as a sense of fleeing in terror or fleeing out of terror. So, Sudesh Mishra also states that over time, diaspora as a term had, to quote him, accrued positive resonance as well, bespeaking a sense of tenacity, resistance, and preservation during the worst of circumstances. So, progressively we see diaspora also accrues, also invites certain positive connotations. The term has taken a shift in its emphasis from scatterings or departure and deportation from homeland to arrival and gatherings in the hostland. So, it's also talking about experiences during and after one's arrival in the hostland. The hostland becomes the new homeland, and that is something optimistic, connoted subsequently when the term diaspora has journeyed to acquire newer situations, acquire the experiences, or assimilate the experiences of other groups, other social groups than only the Jews. So when we look at a diaspora vis-a-vis only the Jewish experience, it is almost like a curse word, it is almost like something very negative. Whereas when we expand it to understand other social groups, there is also some positivity and optimism associated with it. Historically, the Jewish diaspora, which is rooted in the story of the mass exodus, remained in the dominant paradigm of diaspora. The exodus is a reminder of the pain and suffering that is associated with violent dislocations and dispositions. And suffering was, therefore, an undeniable part of the concept of diaspora to begin with. The word diaspora has, however, traveled through time, as I was saying, and during the course of its travel, it has acquired new semantic connotations. So, in the article that I have mentioned earlier, Diasporas in Modern Societies, William Safran refers to the process by which words such as diaspora widen their semantic fields to, assimilate and accumulate newer meanings. Safran mentions two words, ghetto and Holocaust, as a way of exemplifying his point. Moving away from their etymological roots, diaspora, starts acquiring wider implications. He points out that the word ghetto, for example, has come to designate all kinds of crowded, constricted, and underprivileged or disprivileged urban environments. It has grown out, out of or away from any specific context. Similarly, Holocaust now goes on to refer all kinds of mass murder away from the original historical chapter that we have, that is related to the mass murder and ethnic cleansing of the Jews from Germany. So, Safran demonstrates how the concept of diaspora has assimilated other connotations and become an inclusive umbrella term to refer to varieties of people, including the migrants, expatriates, people in exile, refugees, and so forth. However, Robin Cohen in Global Diasporas, in introduction, makes an observation on Safran and provides some social scientific contour to the new claims rather than allow a journalistic free for all to develop. So, Cohen points out that the Jewish experience and the concept of homeland remained pivotal in Safran's formulations towards, understanding diaspora in other cases. According to Safran, the members of a diaspora retained a collective memory of their original homeland. They idealized their ancestral home, were committed to the restoration of the original homeland, and they continued in various ways to relate and identify to that homeland. As a way of concluding, Cohen rightly underlines the need for both drawing generalized inferences from the Jewish tradition, but also to be sensitive to the inevitable dilutions, changes, and expansions of the meaning of diaspora as it comes to become more widely applied to other conditions and cases. As a result of new developments, the term diaspora now comes to include both categories of people, those who move out of the nation state willingly as well as under threat or force. So, as a way of drawing our conclusion, diaspora studies have gained a significant place in academia. Today, research on diaspora is conducted from numerous academic perspectives as debates on diaspora are spread across a wide range of disciplines, which include sociology, anthropology, geography, human geography, migration studies, culture studies, politics, international relations, race and race studies, multiculturalism, postcolonialism, political economy, and communications. So, we see that diaspora studies has widened up its scope, and there is so much more to revisit, examine, and to disinter from this field. With this, I would stop our lecture here today. Let's meet with a new topic and another round of discussions in our next lecture. Thank you.